guys, thanks for tuning in for another Comics Weekly wrap-up where I share with you the comics and trades that I've read for the week. If you got brought here possibly because I mentioned in my hashtag Freddy Reads video last week that this was going to be supernatural horror comics, then yay, props for you guys showing up. Or if you happen to be here because you searched for a certain comic book title, or maybe you saw this in one of the Facebook groups or any of the other places where I post my weekly wrap-ups, then thanks for tuning in. And as promised, this video will be horror supernatural books. Of course, the ones in the thumbnail. Yeah, so let's get on with this. The first book of the week that I read is Avengers, Scarlet Witch, and this is another one of those, like, compilation books where it's all stories centered around Scarlet Witch. The cover for this book is absolutely beautiful, which kind of makes the content very disappointing. Well, I'm just saying the content inside was very disappointing in comparison to the actual book itself. What it is exactly that. It is a compilation of stories, and they're ones taken from various time periods. Like it starts out with this one, it looks like it's from the 90s. It has Scarlet Witch with very short hair, which I never really liked that Scarlet Witch with the short hair. I think she's looks better with the sexy, long, sexy red hair, you know, but... And this couple of stories were just okay. They were all kind of centered around her being a witch and a supernatural fighting demons, and very little focus on her actually being a mutant. It's mostly like they're treating her as like she's a supernatural magician, sorceress type character. So, I think I was expecting more like mutant type stuff, like X-Men, but I just thought this was okay, and I only rated this one 3 out of 5 stars, I do believe, or maybe I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. It's hard to say, because it was, or no, I was thinking of rating it 2 out of 5 stars because the content was pretty bad, but then the very ending story, the one that was from another compilation called Arcanum or something like that, was really good. So I think that's why I swayed my vote to 3 out of 5 stars, just on that alone. But, yes, she was in the Age of Ultron movie, so, I mean, maybe people would want to check her out just based on that. But like I said, the ending part of this book was better than the beginning, and there's some of that from that book. Okay, up next we have 28 Days Later, The Aftermath, and if you've never heard of 28 Days Later, you must have been living under a rock, because this was a really, really great movie. I don't want to say that it was zombies, but it was a rage virus, but they were zombie-like type monsters, if that makes any sense. Now, before I really get into this book, I want to mention something about the title. Now, I really don't understand why it's called 28 Days Later, The Aftermath, because once I started reading it, I found out that it was a prequel to 28 Days Later, and I was kind of like, well, why the fuck did you guys call it The Aftermath? Because the title implies that it's events that happened after 28 Days Later, the movie. So yeah, basically, that's all you really need to know without me spoiling it, is that it is a prequel. It is the events that happened before the film 28 Days Later. So, like, with that being said, you know, it tells you kind of how the virus was developed, like their tests and trials and all that, and then leads into the outbreak just before the guy wakes up in the movie. The artwork was pretty decent, and the way it was told was kind of told, like, in scenes, like, very fast scenes, like the creatures were in the movie, you know, where they kind of moved really fast and how rapidly everything goes. But, being it is what it is, I was thinking at first, before I even started reading this, I was thinking, oh yeah, that's going to be like a 4-star book. But I think I only rated this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was just okay. I may have rated it 4 out of 5 stars, but I think it's, if anything, it's more like a 3.5. It was just okay, like, but it wasn't like that great. And the whole confusion with the title really had me, because like, why would you call it The Aftermath when it takes place before the events of the film? I don't know. And one of the cool things I thought was that it's actually produced by the company that produced the film, Fox Atomic Comics. Well, it's called Fox Atomic, of course, the producer, but you know what I mean. Next we have Howie's Wool, the graphic novel omnibus. And I guess the omnibus collects like all 3 books in the Wool trilogy. I know that for a while Wool was kind of trending on BookTube, and it sounded interesting because everybody was talking about it. It's this post-apocalyptic dystopian where everybody lives in these missile silos, I guess. Well, they all live underground, and the thing is, the book wasn't really post-apocalyptic, but it was more of a political thriller, if anything. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I really don't want to spoil it. But after having read this, I really don't think I'm too interested in reading the novels. I did only rate this 3 out of 5 stars. I found it to be just okay. And after I read this, I had to do a little bit of research to find out exactly how this had gotten started. And I guess that Wool had started out as a short story or a novella. And the author claims that the fans had asked for it to be expanded, so it was written into like 3 parts, and yeah, and then it became this. So I was not really impressed with it. There were parts that were very vague that they didn't really understand, like they used the phrase going out to clean, and I know what it meant because they showed what was going on, but like I don't understand why they called it that, and there was no real clear indication as to why it was called Wool. So that was kind of vague, and I don't know if that was why I really didn't enjoy it, but it just seemed like it was really drawn out, stretched out, and really unnecessary, if you ask me. I just thought it was just too much for such a short, seemingly story. After that, I read Hellboy Darkness Calls. I think this was volume 8. But don't quote me on that. This was another Hellboy by Mike Mignola. Of course, he's in England just after another mission, and a bunch of random stuff happens. So there's involvement with witches. Of course, it's supernatural. And a lot of Russian folklore, like Baba Yaga and Koshai, I think his name is. So this one was really good. It was really suspenseful, definitely fast-paced. Not too many boring, slow parts. So I did rate this one 4 out of 5 stars. Of course, I think I've rated all the Hellboys that because they're usually pretty good. Can't get into too much about the story because I don't want to spoil it. But yes, it was fast-paced, enjoyable. It involves witches and Baba Yaga trying to get revenge on Hellboy. After that, I read I Kill Giants, and this is the Titan edition. I think it's called the Titan edition because it's got a load of extras, and that's why it's so thick. The story was really not that big. Well, anyways, it's about a little girl named Barbara Thorson. She's, you know, kind of odd. She keeps to herself. She's really into dragons and Dungeons and Dragons, I should say. And she has like problems at home that I can't really say too much about that because if I tell you what's going on, it kind of spoils it because it's like a big reveal and it's like pivotal in this book as to what happens. And of course she's bullied and has interactions with bullies, but she believes that she is a giant killer. She's like this tomboyish type girl who kind of keeps to herself, and I really enjoyed this, and once it was the big... I was thinking this was going to be a 3-star book until I got to the big reveal about what's going on in her home life, that I really appreciated this story, and I did rate this 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good. And if you have not read this one yet, you should definitely check it out because it was kind of touching, you know, and it was entertaining, to say the least. It's all black and white, by the way, and kind of drawn like in a manga style. But that one was, it's definitely worth checking out, this one too. After that, and I think this one will be my last book for this weekly wrap-up, we have Marvel's Sigil Out of Time. I don't think there are any other volumes of this. I think it's like a standalone. But it's some, like, it was like a side alternate comic called Cross-Gen Comics. And it's kind of weird because it's like magic, fantasy, but like science fiction-y with time travel and stuff. I really couldn't get into this because it's so new and it doesn't really explain itself in such a small volume. And I think there are other books that are part of the cross-gen thing that maybe put this all better together. But this one was really kind of vague, and I just didn't really enjoy reading it. I only rated this one 2 out of 5 stars because it was just so vague at times, and it just didn't really put itself together well. I mean, the artwork was decent, but the story was horribly told. So I really didn't know what was going on or what the deal was with the sigil. The sigil is this thing that's like a birthmark, but it looks like a tattoo. So that's one of the reasons why I just couldn't get into that one. So that is my weekly wrap-up for this week. If you happen to be a repeated viewer but you're not already a subscriber, feel free to hit subscribe so that way you'll know when my videos are uploaded and you can see them. If you've read any of these or if you have any intentions of reading them, let me know down below. Let me know what you thought of them or what you possibly think about books you may be excited to read. Thanks for watching, and until next time, later guys.